Level check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Dan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Nick. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Check. 1, 2.
Mic check 1, 2, 1, 2. Nick's mic. Mic check 1, 2.
Dan's mic. 1, 2. Let Dan Rusanowsky. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Mic check. Nick's mic. Mic check 1, 2, 1, 2.
Double check.
I'll be louder when it's time.
Hello, Sharks fans. Welcome to Sharks Draft Live, presented by Kaiser Permanente. I'm Dan Rusanowsky.
And I'm Nick Nollenberger. This morning we're talking all things 2021 NHL Draft, and we're giving you a preview on what we expect from both the Sharks and from the Barracuda this upcoming season.
Some real excitement, Nick, yesterday as the Sharks selected William Eklund 7th overall, and we're going to talk extensively about that. But also we want to hear what you have to think. And to do that, we want to utilize the great services of Twitter. So tweet us at San Jose Sharks. That's the @ symbol San Jose Sharks. And you'll be able to send us all of your comments, and we're going to be dealing with those during the course of this broadcast.
Well, Dan, I'm sure fans have questions about the trade that transpired just a week ago. The Sharks acquired a goaltender, 25-year-old Adin Hill from the Arizona Coyotes. Hill coming over to the Bay Area along with a 7th-round draft pick in 2022. Coming back the other way will be Josef Kožanaš. Kožanaš going to Arizona along with a 2nd-round draft pick in 2022. Dan, this is a goaltender you're familiar with in Adin Hill. You saw him last year as a member of the Coyotes. So what are your thoughts about the acquisition of this young goaltender?
Well, I am, but we want to definitely go to the fact that the San Jose Sharks are about to select in the 3rd round, and we'll get that information to you as soon as we possibly can. However, Adin Hill is somebody that I think is a very, very good pickup for the Sharks, and I want to talk about that in a variety of ways. Number one, he's really athletic. He's somebody that has always been able to make that big pressure save, and you often do that on the strength of your athleticism. He's big. He's 6'6", and that's something that was missing from the Sharks' immediate system. The goaltenders are getting bigger these days in the NHL, and I think that that's something that's a factor. But the third factor that might be the most important is experience. And think about it. He has played 49 games in the NHL, and some of his best hockey has actually been against San Jose. But that is actually not only more games than Martin Jones had at the same age when he joined the Sharks from the LA Kings, it's more than the last 4 starting goaltenders that the Sharks have had. Antti Niemi hadn't even played in the NHL when he was 25 years old. Played as a 25-year-old for the Chicago Blackhawks before coming to the Sharks. And then you go back before that, Yevgeny Nabokov, and before that, Steve Shields. The starting goaltenders for the Sharks had less experience than Adin Hill has coming into this campaign, and I think that that's an underrated aspect of his qualifications.
It's funny that you mentioned experience because he has it in spades when it comes to the American Hockey League as well. You combine his regular season and playoffs. He's played over 150 games at the American Hockey League level, a very successful goaltender at that level. He had to cut his teeth after Arizona selected him in the 3rd round a handful of years ago. You mentioned his size. That's the first thing that's going to jump out at you when you look at the piece of paper. You look at his intangibles, its size, but experience too. Although he's 25 years old, he's got tons of experience at the AHL level. I saw him firsthand against the Barracuda. In fact, he played the Barracuda 19 times in total between the regular season and the playoffs over a 3.5-year span. So this is an experienced guy who's on an affordable contract. He'll be a restricted free agent next year. But a great opportunity for him to come to San Jose and probably get the biggest opportunity of his career. So I know he's excited about the opportunity as well.
And it's very similar to those other 4 starting goaltenders over the course of recent Sharks history over the last couple of decades. They've got a chance to prove themselves as a number 1 goaltender. Will Adin Hill be that at the start of the year? We'll find out, because obviously the time between draft day and the start of training camp and even the start of the regular season provide often different rosters and different opportunities. But all in all, the first-round draft selection yesterday was a really exciting one. We're talking about William Eklund, who went 7th overall. Doug Wilson Jr., who is the Sharks' director of scouting, let slip during the course of a Zoom call that he was actually number 2 on the Sharks' overall draft board list. Number 1, of course, was Owen Power. That was the expected draft selection, the big defenseman out of the University of Michigan that went to the Buffalo Sabres. And the Seattle Kraken drafted somebody that the Sharks really liked as well in Matty Beniers. But I want to get to William Eklund. He is a very unusual player in the sense that he was in the Swedish Hockey League, the Swedish Elite League, as it were, at the age of 17. That is exceedingly unusual, and he's a very mature player that was playing out of position a bit this last year, listed as a left wing, but the Sharks really see him as a center.
Yeah, when they brought him up on the television yesterday, it had him as a wing, but Doug Wilson Jr., director of scouting for the Sharks, said they envision him being a center. Now, does he start in the NHL as a center, as a winger? We'll wait and see. He played a lot of wing this past season, but as you alluded to, Dan, he played in the SHL. That's a very good league. We've seen players come from that league, step right into the NHL, and have success. He dealt with a lot of adversity last year, too. This is a young man that had COVID, so he could not participate in the World Junior Championships. He also had his appendix taken out, so he's an interesting kid. He's got a ton of skill. We saw boards have him going as high as 3 overall. The Sharks mentioned they had him very high on their board, number 2 overall. So when everything is said and done, fans, you look at social media, they were excited about the draft pick, and it's a nice little piece, whether he plays center or he plays wing. He's going to eventually insert in the Sharks lineup and could be a nice piece for Bob Boughner down the line to use.
And one thing that I notice about him in all the scouting reports is his dedication to puck pursuit. That's something that is an exceedingly important factor in hockey these days. He has excellent speed. He's a great skater. And I think he's got the tendencies of a center iceman. My guess is that that's probably where they see him projected long-term in the NHL. But the fact that he can play left wing at an elite level like the Swedish Hockey League at age 17 and 18 shows you that he's also very versatile. He's a scorer, but yet he's also a playmaker. And you know what else? He's a very mature individual. Everything that we're hearing about this guy, he's an older brother. His younger brother is playing in the Djurgården system, in the Swedish system, in the Elite League. And so he's another guy that's coming up and might get drafted. But here's something else, too. He's got a whole bunch of younger brothers and sisters, and he's sort of the ringleader. They said that even in the neighborhood where he is, he wants to get up and go out and play, street hockey, and he rounds up the kids in the neighborhood, and they all follow him around. He has leadership capabilities, and the fact that he's been given the responsibility of taking care of younger members of his family is something else again, because that's a responsibility that a lot of teenagers don't take. So this is a kid that has maturity beyond his years. He has great skill and great ability, and I think we've got to be really excited about him.
Yeah, and Doug Wilson went as far as saying he's a coach's dream, and I think when he said that, he was alluding to the fact that he's kind of the head of the household. I know he's a child, but he's the oldest of a big group of kids, a mixed family, and very excited to have this young player come into the fold. And as you mentioned, he's got versatility. He's a goal scorer. He played as a teenager and a young teenager in a man's league. Very impressive and not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not an easy thing to do whatsoever. So that's the summary of the first selection that the Sharks had, 7th overall. William Eklund, drafted as a left wing, probably projected as a center long term, and has all of the unbelievable tools in order to be an excellent National Hockey League player. What about the rest of the first round? I mean, there weren't too many surprises. I think that part of it, too, was the fact that Owen Power selected first was the big hoopla surrounding the draft. But there were a whole bunch of guys, 4 from the University of Michigan, that were selected, and even 1 incoming. So that's an exciting time for the draft. But take a look at the first round results here. Matty Beniers, 2nd overall, was somebody the Sharks drafted highly. Anaheim 3rd, going with Mason McTavish, centerman that I know you thought was a pretty good hockey player.
Yeah, I liked his game. In fact, I texted Zach Gallant, who plays for the Barracuda. He played with Mason McTavish 2 years ago in the OHL, and he said he's a sniper, he's a goal scorer. When he's in front of the net and he's in close range, he's going to bury the puck. He's a guy now that Zach Gallant will have to face whenever Mason McTavish does join the Ducks organization, whether it's in San Diego on the AHL or up into the NHL level. He's certainly going to be a handful. But, yeah, there was a lot of things that kind of had to shake out before the Sharks picked at 7th overall. But if you listen to what the brass had to say, what the scouting department had to say following yesterday's first round, they were very pleased how things shook out. In fact, there was questions on whether the Sharks would trade up, whether they would trade back. In the end, they sit at lucky number 7, and they get William Eklund.
Well, that they did. And just before that, Kent Johnson going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was a highly regarded center iceman that's at Michigan. I think that the feel-good story of the top 5 was Luke Hughes getting picked by the New Jersey Devils. In that particular instance, basically he joins his brother, and they're going to be teammates. I think his brother was the happiest guy of everybody in that draft party.
Yeah, Jack was jumping up and down. He looked like a little kid. In fact, they still are pretty young guys. 2 of the 3 are, I believe, still teenagers. So Jack pretty excited to have his brother joining the fold out in New Jersey. That's going to be a pretty fun proposition when it does come to be. It does look like the youngest of the 3 is going to go to Michigan this year as a true freshman, so we'll see if he ends up pushing for an NHL job. I would expect him to go the NCAA route and then maybe push for a job following his freshman season in the Big Ten.
Well, also in the draft, some, shall we say, legacies beyond the Hughes family. I would say that if you take a look, Tyler Boucher, 10th overall. That might have been the surprise pick of the top 10 because he was expected to be slotted around between 15 and 20 in the draft. But he was described as the most physical player of all of the players in the draft. Maybe that's why the Ottawa Senators decided to go for him. His dad is a former Shark, Brian Boucher, who, of course, is on national television these days and involved with the Philadelphia Flyers broadcast. So that's kind of an exciting pick from a Sharks perspective. But also some other NHL alumni children. Cole Sillinger, his dad Mike, played over 1,000 games in the NHL, was selected 12th overall, also by the Columbus Blue Jackets. And also Chase Stillman, 29th overall, went to New Jersey. Corey Stillman, of course, former first-round draft pick, gets to see his son drafted in the first round, and those are just a couple of examples. I think maybe one of the big pictures, too, happened in the goaltending department, and that was when Steve Yzerman, the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, ended up trading up, and they ended up drafting Sebastian Cossa, who's another behemoth of a guy, and a very highly regarded player from the Western Hockey League.
What I find fascinating about the goaltending spot is it's a organization-by-organization basis. It just depends on where you view goaltenders and whether you want to take one in the first round. In fact, the Sharks have never taken one in the first 2 rounds, yet we saw a couple go in the first round yesterday. Things that you notice with these guys, they're big. You mentioned it earlier, Dan. Teams are looking for large goaltenders, athletic goaltenders, especially early in the draft. But you look at last year's playoffs, the top 4, all 4 goaltenders in the top 4 in the NHL playoffs at one point or first-round draft picks. So there's something to be said there. We'll see if these guys pan out. But the things that jump off the paper, again, is the size with these two goaltenders. Somewhat of a surprise, though. Detroit elects to go with the Western League goaltender instead of who was many consider to be the more highly touted goaltender in the Swedish kid. But we'll see how things play out down the road.
And the San Jose Sharks involved right now as round 3 is underway. The Sharks traded their 71st pick to the St. Louis Blues for the 81st and 177th picks. So that's just a move in the draft downward, but to gain more opportunities to select more players. And that's a big deal that we really have to do. So take a look. For those of you watching on video can see what the board looks like. Simon Robertson was selected 71st overall with the pick that the San Jose Sharks originally had. 72nd. Now the Carolina Hurricanes are on the clock. So this is what happens during the draft all the time. And in fact, yesterday during the first round, there were a lot of discussions, Nick, about possibly that the Sharks might have been making a move even yesterday. But we were told by the organization, though, those were essentially what-if maneuvers. What if, say, William Eklund was not available 7th overall? That was probably what they were thinking about, what they might do. And so there were possibilities for trades even then. So I guess we have to stay tuned.
The name of the game is being able to pivot. So for the Sharks yesterday, if you listen to what the scouting department said, they got the player they wanted. Had he not been there, maybe they move back. We see the Sharks now make a trade here, continuing to add assets. We saw them add assets during the trade deadline as well. They took some money off the plate of other teams. They acquired draft picks. So they're doing everything they can to continue to try to stock the cupboard, if you will, try to bring in young players. Last year, of course, the Sharks had 9 picks, all 9 forwards. They go with a forward in the first round. We'll see what they choose to do as we continue along.
Well, Nick, we are underway with our Sharks Draft Live coverage presented by Kaiser Permanente, and we're very glad that you're with us today. We've got a lot more great things coming up, so stay tuned.
Draft board of music, yeah. We got a break here.
Last night, the Sharks drafted William Eklund with the number 7 overall pick. Dana and myself had an opportunity to catch up with the young man and his feelings about being the newest member of the Sharks organization.
Team, and I'd like to also say that it's very exciting to be drafted 7th overall, I'm sure, but it's also pretty late or maybe pretty early where you are right now in Sweden. Tell us your reaction and how you got through the night waiting for the draft to start.
Yeah, it was just nerves from the day I woke up, so I'm just going through that all day long, and I was just so happy to get my name called out there by the San Jose, so I'm just happy and excited for what's to come.
William, I know you didn't have to wait too long. The 7th pick, and there were lots of different mock drafts leading into the draft on where you would be officially picked. Did you have any inkling, any idea that the Sharks were going to be the ones that called your name?
Actually, I had no clue. So I was just happy. So I had no clue.
William, we know that your dad, Christian, played in the Swedish Hockey League for a long time, and that, of course, was for Djurgården, and that's an organization that's very close to you as well. But that's a big history with the Sharks, since Marcus Ragnarsson, a former captain of that team, played for the Sharks. Johan Garpenloff, involved in Swedish hockey, played for the Sharks. So give us an idea about the history there.
In Djurgården?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great organization here. I've been in the locker room since I was like 4 or 5 years old. So with my dad and those great players who played all around the world. So just being able to play there too, and it's a dream for me too. So just an amazing culture with the fans and everything around it.
I'm sure it was an honor for you to throw on that sweater, being that your father did play for the team as well. But you were just 18 years of age this past season, playing among men, yet you were able to hold your own. You had a tremendous first season in the SHL. What did you feel like was the key to your success? And when you started the year last year, where did you improve the most, do you feel like, in your game going into the draft?
I think I improved my way of being in the more dangerous areas of the ice, being on the inside and trying to, in those ways, get a more, just be in the right place to score a goal. So that's the thing I think I improved the most this season.
William, this past year has been a real challenge for everybody in the world because of the COVID pandemic. And one of the things that you had to deal with was you had a positive test for COVID and weren't able to play in the World Junior Tournament, but yet you've managed to persevere and get through all of that. How difficult was that experience, and how do you rank that among the challenges that you've had to deal with in the last couple of years of your life?
Yeah, that was real hard for me. My goal before the season was to make that team. It was one of my goals. So it was just a setback for me that took hard. But like I will rank that as pretty much as high as my appendix got removed. So yeah, two big setbacks there.
William, speaking of your appendix, I know you told folks that you felt you had a fever, you didn't feel well, you're on a bus when you started feeling symptoms. To go through something like that, an emergency surgery is always scary, but for you to get on the other side of that and still have a successful season, as Danny mentioned, also going through COVID and not being allowed to play in the World Junior Championships. Adversity was kind of the name of the game this past season for you, yet you had a successful year. So how do you feel like you got through it all?
That was just a thing for me to get back even stronger. Like it became my driving force, and just to get back and be even better when I come back. So that was just something that's keeping me going. So I'm just not happy that I have it happen, but I just love those things because it's driven me to get even better when I come back.
Just before we spoke to you, William, you had an opportunity to have a chat with Erik Karlsson, who's certainly one of the great players coming from your native country in Sweden. What did it mean to you to have him come onto the call and speak to you?
It was so cool. You've seen him since he was a little kid, doing what he does in that league, and being so successful. It's means huge for me. So he was just welcoming me to the team, and so happy to have me there.
William, you played with Alex Holtz this past season. He was taken 7th overall in 2020 by the New Jersey Devils. Did he walk you at all through the process, give you some tips on what you should expect?
I was there at his last year when he got drafted. We have a good conversation every day. So yeah, we're talking about it sometimes, but trying to keep it like the social life too. So it's been good line there.
Tell us a little bit about the E.J. McGuire Award of Excellence, which was presented to you by the NHL Central Scouting Department. That's awarded for strength of character and competitiveness and athleticism. Obviously, to get over COVID and everything else you had to go through, that was a big part of it. But also, it tells us a little bit about what kind of a player that you are. Can you give us an idea of number one, besides what that award and what that recognition means to you, if that does describe the type of player that you want to be?
Yeah, I think it stressed me good. I was just so honored to get that prize, and seeing those players who got it before me, and I think that's a way that I want people to think about me. Always give it in all in every single day. So I'm just so honored.
William, I know you went on record and said Matt Barzal was your favorite current NHL player. I think if you're the next Matt Barzal, Sharks fans will be very excited. There's some big shoes to fill. But who would you say currently in the NHL is a player that you try to kind of model your game after, or that you see some similarities between yourself and that player?
I will say Matthew Barzal there. That's a player I want to see, and how can I improve to be doing things that he do. So yeah, I will say Matthew Barzal.
We all know about Matt's speed, but what parts of your game do you see similarities? Is it the speed? What do you see that you hope to become a similar player to Matt?
His way of creating chances. He's creating so much chances, and his quick turn and how he uses his edge work to shake off defenders. And that's some similarities I think we had, and some things like I can improve.
Training camp is going to be coming up. We don't know exactly what your plans are, and we'll have to find that out over the course of the rest of the summer. But are you looking forward to your first National Hockey League training camp and actually skating with some guys like Erik Karlsson every day?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I don't know if you're very familiar with the Bay Area, San Jose as a whole, but what do you know about California? What are you most looking forward to when you get out to San Jose?
I don't know. I can't say I know that much about the city. So, but I'm just looking forward to join this organization and start something good. I think we have something good here.
I know one thing you'll enjoy is certainly the weather. It's been beautiful out lately, and hopefully it'll be nice when training camp rolls around as well.
Yeah.
Final question, William. We'd just like to ask you about your dad. He actually played for Djurgården for a long time, but now he's got a YouTube channel going on. And give us an idea of how much coverage he's going to give to the National Hockey League now that his son is a first-round draft pick of the San Jose Sharks.
I don't know. Hasn't told me yet, but I don't know. It's maybe coming in the morning here. Knocking on my door at 7 in the morning, and yeah, start talking. So yeah, we'll see about that.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you, William, and we're really, really excited to welcome you to the organization. Wanted to say thank you for taking the time to speak with us, and we will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, William.
Thank you.
William Eklund, our first-round draft pick in San Jose, 7th overall. Now, Nick, it was expected that the Sharks were going to have only 7 picks after that, but because of a trade with the St. Louis Blues, the Sharks have moved from the 71st overall pick to 81st. And in return for that, they got a later draft pick from the St. Louis Blues. So right now, there's 1 pick in the 3rd round and 2 each in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds of today's draft. And then finally in the 7th round, they select 199th. So that's Doug Wilson doing his great magical work with not only management of picks, but also management of draft position.
What did he call it last year? He called it the Joe Will special. So more late-round draft picks, more swings at the plate. We've seen the Sharks have a lot of success in the later rounds, more success arguably than anybody in the National Hockey League over the last decade plus. But you get more swings at the plate, more opportunities to hit a home run.
Well, and last year they drafted Alex Young in the late rounds. He's a really good draft pick out of Colgate University. Just an example of what might happen later on. But right now we've got a lot more great things coming up on our Sharks Draft Live, presented by Kaiser Permanente, and we'll return with more in a moment.
Last night, Dan Rusanowsky had an opportunity to catch up with Doug Wilson Jr., the director of scouting for the Sharks, not only talk about the William Eklund pick, but also talk about what the Sharks' plans are in day number 2.
Dougie, congratulations on the opportunity to draft William Eklund. How exciting is it to have him be part of the organization?
I'm so excited. I think when you get to meet him and he comes to San Jose for development camp, you'll fall in love with him just like our scouting staff did. He's an unbelievable person, high character. He's going to represent the Sharks extremely well. He was 17 years old and he played on a men's team this year, and their team did well, made the playoffs, and he was a huge cog to it. But he brings a lot of qualities that we look for in our players on and off the ice, and I'm so excited.
The last time the Sharks drafted as highly as 7th or better, they drafted Milan Michalek 6th overall back in 2003. And I remember when he was drafted, he was described as one of the most NHL-ready players for that whole draft. Because he has played against men at age 17, is William in that category too, that he's maybe a little more NHL-ready than the average kid that's getting drafted?
I would say he's played against men for the last 2 seasons, so mentally he's much more mature and in that spot. He's been in one of the top leagues in the world, and he's been doing very well. He was the second leading goal scorer on the team last season, and he's a captain on the national team. He's ready. He's a man mentally, but we're obviously not going to rush him. I think the goal of this draft was to get a player that fits in with the time frame of our most recent picks from last season and mold it in with our young core that Cooch leads with our team right now. So it was a home run.
He played left wing because he was a teenager, and he's been a center most of his entire life. So that tells me he's a really versatile player. But what else is it about him that makes him special?
You know what, for me, he's the type of player, similar to Ozzy and Thomas and those guys. He has speed, puck possession, pursuit, And he just fits that mold. You know, he's a highly skilled player. We see him as a centerman. When I spoke with him, that's the position he is. But to be a winger on a top two line over there, he was on the left. Alexander Holtz was on the right, New Jersey's first rounder from last season. And they had a lot of success. So I think for him, he's just a very versatile top line player. But he's so smart. His IQ is unbelievable. And we drafted him as a centerman, and we're just putting him in with the rest of our core right now.
I would suspect that this basically proves the fact you're going to take the best player available, because you guys drafted 9 forwards last year, no defensemen, and there were some defensemen there.
Yeah, you know, unlike the NFL draft or the NBA draft where the players go right onto the team, I just personally believe, and our scouting staff believes, that you have to do what's best for the organization, and the best for the organization is just get the best player available, and things will sort itself out later. But this was a situation I did not personally see happening going into today, so I'm a little speechless on it, but I'm so happy he's here.
I want to talk about that, because this was a unique year, and actually the last 2 years have been very unique in terms of the way you have to scout players, simply relying more on the area or regional scouts rather than having everybody get a look at him in person because of the COVID pandemic. I suspect that would mean that you have people like Shin Larson and Nicky Sundstrom who saw him quite a bit.
Fortunately with William, because he played in the men's league last season, we were all able to see him quite a bit last season live. And then this season we were able to see him live, especially Shin Larson, Nicholas Sundstrom, Tommy Kallio in Finland, Alex Vladika in Czech, and Nikolai Ladigan in Russia. So we had 5 of our scouts all be able to see him a lot live this year, along with Berkey and myself from previous. And he would have been on the national team at Christmas time as well. And he's a huge cog of the Swedish J20 team. So I'm excited to see him kind of going forward here. He's got a huge season ahead of him, but we're very lucky. One
of the things that every player has to do is deal with adversity, and he had a positive COVID-19 test, so he had to deal with that. Couldn't play for his country in the World Junior Tournament. How much do you think that built him as a person?
You know what? Everyone's facing adversity, and it's a strange time right now. It happened with us with Thomas Bordeleau for the World Junior team, and then it happened with William Eklund. Thankfully, because of William's age, he's still eligible for this upcoming season. He would have been one of the youngest players in the tournament last season. So, you know, I think when we talked to him, he's just such a mature human being. He took it in stride and just said there's bigger things happening in the world right now. So it was no woe is me. It was disappointment for about a day, and he moved on. When you meet him and you understand this kid, he's so responsible, he's so professional, also fun-loving guy. I mean, I can't say enough about him as a person, on top of being a great hockey player.
Well, the Central Scouting Bureau gave him the E.J. McGuire Award, which is for things like perseverance and professionalism and athleticism. That has to be a pretty big deal for somebody as young as him to get that kind of recognition even before you talk to him.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime your name's associated with E.J. McGuire, you're in good hands. E.J. was a phenomenal human being. So I think that just with William, our plan is to get him over here for development camp, meet our coaches, skate with our players, and kind of go from there. But he's just a huge addition to the San Jose community and the Bay Area in general.
He says his favorite player is Matthew Barzal, but getting away from the direct comparisons, what type of puck pursuit kind of a player is he? Because I understand that's one of his greatest strengths.
Yes, it is. He's so dynamic in tight areas, and he's very elusive. And that's not just the offensive zone. In the neutral zone, in the defensive zone, being able to strip pucks, create turnovers, get the puck going north. He's the same player in every single zone, and it's fast, and it's possession, it's puck pursuit, it's just high energy. It's exactly how Bob Bugner wants to play. I got a text from Boogie right after saying, I can't wait for this kid. So he just fits us.
Analytics versus the eye test, how do you balance that?
You take in as much information as possible. I mean, we're fortunate to have a relationship with SAP, so we did have a lot of information on him. On top of the underlying numbers of his possession being so good, you know, scoring 11 goals in that league as a 17-year-old, you can see it with the eye test yourself. So I think when we tracked all of his possession type numbers, that popped with what you see on the ice, how close he keeps his distance to players, how fast he gets back on the back check, around the net, how he scores the goals, everything like that. So he's a goal scorer, he's a playmaker. He's just a really, really good hockey player.
And also, being so young and playing for a team like Djurgården, I mean, they've produced people for the Sharks like Marcus Ragnarsson and Johan Garpenloff and players like that. I'd imagine that that's a pretty good company to be with.
Yep, I got a text from Dougie Murray right after. His grandfather, Lasse Bjorn, one of the best Djurgården players of all time. His name's up in the rafters. So we've got a good Swedish group here. I know Erik Karlsson spoke with him too, and yep, he's going to fit in great.
Christian Eklund, his dad, played a long time for Djurgården too. Somebody that deserves credit. I guess that that means that he's going to be on his YouTube show.
Yes, he is. Christian's a character. He's a good guy, and he's also a very good hockey player when he was with Djurgården. So he's got good bloodlines. William and him are a little bit different type of players, but yeah, he grew up in a hockey family. He's got a very close-knit brothers and family that he's with, and yeah, excited to have him.
Let's look ahead now for William Eklund. He has development camp that's coming up for the San Jose Sharks. He'll be at that. You have to decide exactly where he's going to be next year, and that's a process that's ongoing. But give us just an idea of what's next.
Sure. William will come over for development camp in August. We'll talk to him, and we'll discuss options for training camp so it doesn't overlap with Djurgården and go from there. But you know, I think for William, I would keep expectations that he's probably going to be playing in Sweden against men next season, but we haven't gotten him here in San Jose yet to talk to him. So we'll discuss the plan. Doug and Joe will and Tim Burke will talk with him as well, and we'll kind of figure something out. But I think right now his plan is to still play against men over there and develop and be on the same timeline as our other top players like Ozzy and Thomas and guys like that.
You have a whole bunch more picks from round 2 on. There's probably a lot going on. I know there was a lot of discussion between a lot of teams, yours included, during round number 1. But just give us a general kind of a roadmap for the rest of the draft.
We have a lot of picks in the 2nd to 7th rounds. And this is the range where there's a lot of good players, but there's also players that didn't play a lot this season, specifically in Ontario. So it's going to be interesting to see how everybody falls, if anyone gets picked higher or lower for those particular reasons. But as far as our draft list goes, we're pretty excited to get 7 guys unless we move around.
Thanks a lot for your time. I think it's pretty safe to say that Doug Wilson Jr. is very excited about the opportunity to have William Eklund in the Sharks organization. And, you know, Doug Jr.'s stock has been rising these last couple of years as an outstanding director of scouting. And as Eklund develops, that's just going to be another feather in his cap in terms of he and his staff finding great players to come to the NHL. Well, it's time for us to answer your trivia questions that you asked, and they're not trivial, actually. They're Twitter questions. The Twitter questions that we wanted you to send were at San Jose Sharks, the Twitter handle of the hockey team. And the first question we have is from Angus, 4221. I think it's an appropriate one after that chat with Doug Wilson Jr. How good could William Eklund be? And Nick, that is a question that everybody wants to have answered.
That's the million-dollar question, Dan. He was drafted just last night, and sometimes in hockey there's a development curve that goes along with getting drafted in the NHL, but I think the Sharks have hopes that this kid can develop quickly and step into the lineup, whether it be this upcoming year or even a year from now. But he compared himself to Matt Barzal, and I think if fans could get a comp in the NHL, Matt Barzal would be near the top of the list. This is an elite, dynamic, offensive player. Another player leading into the draft that experts kind of compared him to was Sebastian Aho, center for the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think if you're a Sharks fan, either one of those players you'll take, right? These are superstar hockey players. Still very early. He's a very young guy. He will turn 19 in October, but very high ceiling, if you will, when it comes to what this young man could be.
In my opinion, I think that the maturity of the young man, the fact that he is taking on some responsibilities at age 17, not only with his family, but also in his hockey career and playing in the top level of Swedish professional hockey, really says something. And that Djurgården organization is one of the best. They've produced a number of San Jose Sharks over the course of the last number of years. So I think that the fact that they see so much in this young guy says a lot. The big question for me is, what is his NHL readiness, and how quickly will he get to the NHL? You don't want to rush that, and the Sharks certainly won't. He's expected, as Doug Wilson Jr. said, to go back to Swedish hockey this year after coming to the development camp for the Sharks this next month. However, if you go back to the last time that the Sharks had a pick as high as number 7, that was 2003. And Milan Michalek was regarded as maybe the most NHL-ready player at that draft, and he played immediately in the NHL as well with the San Jose Sharks. So who knows? You know, he has all of the skills, he has the dynamics, and most importantly, he has what the Sharks are looking for in terms of their development. What else we got for questions?
Yeah, he's an exciting young player. Let's move on. This is coming from B_Allen4, and this is his question, Dan. He says, What other moves do you think the Sharks will make, whether it's in free agency or maybe even via trades over the next couple of weeks?
Well, let's talk about the next couple of minutes, because the way that things have been going at the draft, you always know that something is going to happen at that Sharks draft table. And San Jose has already traded down to the number 81 spot, picking up yet another draft pick a little bit later in the draft, the Joe Will special, as we like to call it. Joe Will, a master at figuring out what picks the Sharks have and where they're going to be, not only this season, but in the future. But what Doug Wilson wants, beyond getting the top players available in the draft, are obviously a couple of other things. He said that there were a couple of goals that he wanted to achieve this summer. One was address the goaltending question. The start of that was the Adin Hill acquisition, but there may be more moves to go when it comes to that. We'll just have to wait over the summer. Martin Jones is still a member of the Sharks. There are a lot of other things that have to be decided, not the least of which is how to manage that financially. But on the other side of things, getting a third-line center, somebody with a little bit more NHL experience, is something that he wanted to do. And we've seen this with the Barracuda. You have a lot of great prospects. But when they get to the NHL level, sometimes they're just not quite as ready as you'd like them to be. The Sharks plugged in a couple of different guys in that role. In fact, one of them, Alex True, was actually drafted in the expansion draft by the Seattle Kraken. But I think that that's something that he needs to do over the course of the next few weeks, and you'll see the Sharks be very active in that area. If they're going to be active in free agency, that's probably where it's going to be.
Well, you addressed it. The goaltending position was kind of at the front of the brains of a lot of fans, right? They go out and they acquire Adin Hill just 1 week ago. You mentioned the 3C spot. That's been a big talking point among media as that third center. Every team wants to build up the middle. We saw last year the Sharks selected Ozzy Weisblatt in the first round. Some people had him touted as a winger. Doug Wilson Jr. said, we envision him as a center. Same thing with William Eklund this past season, just yesterday when it comes to the draft. Some people viewed him as a winger. Sharks in the future hope he can be down the middle as a center iceman. And I mentioned over the next couple of weeks, Dan, our guest that's going to join us as we continue along on our draft show will be Sharks defenseman Erik Karlsson. And if you remember, Karlsson was acquired right before training camp, so still a lot can transpire over the next couple of months.
Well, that's true, and we're going to hear from Erik a little bit later in the show to talk about his reaction to get one of his countrymen drafted in the first round, and I know that's going to be an exciting thing that we have. But what we have for you right now is a little bit of a discussion about the expansion draft. That's really where the Sharks season began. They knew they were going to lose a player. Alex True, as we mentioned earlier, was selected by the Seattle Kraken. I think that surprised some people. But general manager Doug Wilson was very, very much obviously involved with his staff in making sure that all the strategies, depending on who was selected, would play out into where the team is now. We talked to Doug Wilson this week, and he had a lot to say about it. Doug, it's an exciting time for the Sharks organization. The expansion draft has just concluded. We've just gone through round one. Big draft going on today. Give us an idea of what your philosophy was going into the expansion draft.
Well, we knew that going into it we were going to lose a good player. And the philosophy I think that Ronnie Francis and his team was going to take was unknown to all of us. We ended up losing a player, Alexander True, who we think is a good young player. We think the development work that Roy Sommer and our group did with him allowed him to grow through his career. Mixed emotions. Happy for Alex to get the opportunity he's going to get, but a little bit sad that it won't be with us.
There are a lot of conversations that go on between you and Ron Francis in that situation. Is that any different than it was 4 years ago when Vegas came in?
It was similar, but they weren't going to expose their hand and tell us exactly what they were going to do. We expected that they were going to take a forward, and it ended up being Alex. He had a history of playing in Seattle, so that made a lot of sense to them, too.
With that in mind, how proud is the organization of the job that was done by Alex to be actually in a position where Seattle would want him like that?
Very much so. I mean, it's indicative of our development people. Roy Sommer, Mike Ricci, Timmy Burke, etc. He's grown as a player. I think he's growing into the opportunity now that I think he'll be able to go in there and go right into their lineup. It reminds me a lot of Barclay Goodrow, I'll be honest with you. We signed him as a free agent, watched him grow, watched the work that he put into it. So you like to see young men like that succeed.
Also, if you look at the people that they drafted, and I know you don't comment a lot on other teams' players, but there are 4 guys in that draft that you know very well. All of them former Sharks organization members. I'm thinking of Colin Blackwell, who played for the Barracuda, was with the New York Rangers. Yanni Gourde also played for the Barracuda and the Worcester Sharks, actually. went on to the Tampa Bay Lightning and got a Stanley Cup. And, also you've got Alex True. And these are guys that I think are really, really interesting players, along with Jonas Donskoy, to give you an idea of what kind of a team that Seattle's going to be in this division.
I think it reveals, the mindset Ronnie Francis had, character people that love to play the game. And these are all young men that, we got to spend some time with, and you could see their work ethic and commitment. And I think it's a good foundation of Seattle to build their team upon.
Well, you've got 8 picks in the draft heading into all of the festivities, and wanted to ask you about the opportunity to select 7th overall, because over the course of the last 22 years, you've only selected in the top 10 4 times, and most recently Timo Meier back in 2015. But to give us an idea of how exciting that is for the scouts, just to have an opportunity to be able to select one of those difference makers.
Well, first of all, we will get a difference maker. I mean, this draft, when we take a look at it, through 7 and actually a couple picks beyond that, we think there's some really, really good players. You go through a little bit of pain when you go through a year like last year, and it makes it worthwhile when you're sitting here, getting ready to pick at the 7th spot. We also have 8 picks in totality. We might have more than that before it's over. When you look at the last 12 months, I think we've added probably 20, 21 players to our reserve list, whether it be through draft picks, last year's draft, this year's draft. Adin Hill, Barabanov, Balcers, etc. So we went through a time frame, not always easy, but to get to this point now and have the reset and the replenish pretty well behind us, we're looking forward to getting into training camp in September, having high level of competition, and adding some quality veteran players the next little while too. Also,
as you look back, you have to really remark that you've made all of your commitments to the fans that you said you were going to. You're going to make sure you weren't going to trade key players. You were going to make sure you replenish the system that you built through the organization. And even in a year of the pandemic, you had an opportunity to even have young players like Ozzy Weisblatt and Co. and several others actually get AHL experience when they might not otherwise have done that, and then develop some players at the NHL level. Are you pretty satisfied with the way things went?
Well, we're not satisfied, but you deal the hand that's dealt with you. I don't think anybody's prepared to go through a pandemic. And I'm extremely proud of our players and our organization to deal with the things they had to last year. No other team had to have their training camp out of market, have 14 of the first 16 games on the road. And then you get to a window of basically games 21 through 40, where I think we played extremely well. We showed what we're capable of. And then we might have run out of gas after that. But hockey players are a creature of habit. Getting back into the cycle of having a development camp, having a normal training camp, having a full training summer, I think will be great. Having our training camp back in our market. We're excited to get going, but first things first, finishing off this draft and picking at 7, adding those 8 players, that's a big moment for us. And the guys have worked hard. The scouts, with the uniqueness of not having a combine, having to do all these interviews on Zoom. A lot of work, a lot of different work, but we're prepared for it.
The job that they did, amazing work, because it was basically your local scouts or your regional scouts that did all of the legwork about the players, correct?
It is correct. And the Zoom interviews, I think our guys are probably close to 200 players that they've interviewed. It's the same for everybody. We're very fortunate. A lot of our scouts do a lot of work on guys in their underage years. So even some of the players that didn't play much this year, we have a pretty good book on them.
Tell us about Adin Hill and how exciting it is to have him in a Sharks uniform.
Well, he's a young man that we're very familiar with. We've seen him play against us several times. He's the right age. He's the right body type. We're looking for somebody that would fit for now and the future, and we'll add him to our goaltending situation. We've got some other young guys coming that we like. But we're excited to have Adin.
So now you get through the NHL entry draft. Expansion, of course, a thing of the past. You have some opportunities, obviously, in the trade department with all of the discussions going on with all of the teams. But also free agency is coming up. Give us an idea of what lies ahead.
Well, we're looking for quality character people. We've got the foundation of a pretty good team. We've got some good young players coming that we've talked about that we've added in the last 12 months. But I think last year we gave players opportunities. We purposely were committed to not trading our first-round pick or any of our top young prospects, the Bordelots, the Weisblatts, the Robins, etc. And what that ended up happening is a lot of the younger players were playing in a lot of games maybe they weren't necessarily ready for it, but we wanted them to get that taste. Now what we'll be doing is adding some quality veterans, and that'll create a highly competitive training camp come September. Players, young guys will still be given the opportunity, but they got to come in and take a job. And I think when you have that competition, it drives your team to the next level. And that's the part that we're going to try and add in the next little while, some quality veterans.
How competitive is the market going to be to actually accomplish that?
Well, it's always competitive. Everybody's looking for the same type of things. But we think that there's enough people out there. There's players that want to be here in San Jose because they know our history. Some of our best moments have happened after we've maybe fallen down and skinned our knees a couple of times. And I believe in the guys in our room. I believe in our coaching staff and the character of them. Them getting the ability to train and be ready to come back in September is pretty exciting because it's been abnormal for a couple of years.
Also, you have the 82-game schedule that's going to be coming out, and so that's something that's really important to have a full normal season of development for everybody. How relieving is it to be back to normal again?
Well, I knock on wood when we say that. I assume we're going to be back to normal, but it starts before then. I mean, the guys have had a lot of time right now to train, get healthy physically and mentally. Last year was a taxing year on everybody in society. But I think the guys, I walk in the gym and I see a bunch of guys in there training hard right now, knowing that we're going to have a development camp, which we weren't able to have a year ago, which will be in mid-August, a training camp where guys are going to come back early, spend some time with each other, have exhibition games. And then imagine this, staying in our own market for training camp and then not having to go on the road for the first month and a half. So that's going to be important for our group. I think our guys are excited about that. And most importantly, they're using this time well. You
mentioned the development camp. But in a sense, is that event a little bit more important this year than it has been in previous years just because of everything you've gone through?
It's extremely important. The growth of our young players was a big part of this plan. Adding players to your group is one thing. Developing them is another. We've got a great development staff. You look at the number of young players that have matriculated up through our organization that are homegrown. Spending time with them, teaching them what pro hockey is all about, creating the opportunities for them, but again, not the jobs. They've got to come in and knock down the door and take a spot on this team.
One thing also is that you had a chance to get closer to some of those young players. I know that several of them actually are training in San Jose right now. Has that been a fruitful experience too, to see that their dedication to the game is what your scouts had predicted that they would have?
It is. You can tell these guys are hockey rats. They love to be around the game. They know that our job is to give them the tools to succeed. Watching them be around some of our veterans and see what it takes and see the commitment. It was just so disjointed last year. And a lot of these young guys were able to come and join the Barracuda and play some games in the playoffs last year and be with each other. But I know as a young man being 18 or 19 and not being able to play or go through some of the things was probably a challenge for them. In the long run, it'll make them mentally tougher, and they'll be able to handle things that come their way. But it's good to spend time with these guys.
What message do you have to the fan base as you approach the season?
We can't wait to get back to have them in our building, because I don't think there's any fan base like ours. I mean, we respond and we need them. We want to make them proud, and our players are really excited to get back and can't wait to the season.
Sharks Draft Live, presented by Kaiser Permanente, continues, and the 81st pick that the San Jose Sharks held has been selected. He is a goaltender, 18-year-old Benjamin Gaudreau, born and raised in Ontario, playing hockey last season for the Sarnia Sting. Remember, the OHL didn't play this year, so his most recent season was 2019-20, where he split time with a goaltending partner. Interesting note, his head coach was Darian Hatcher, longtime NHL defenseman, and one of the assistant coaches on the Sarnia Sting is a former Shark, Brad Staubitz. So maybe there's a little bit of extra intel there for understanding what type of a goaltender he is. But he's 6'2", he's 175 pounds, only 18 years of age, but that is the 27th goaltender, if I'm not mistaken, that the San Jose Sharks have selected. So that is very exciting for the organization. More picks coming up, obviously, and we'll report on those. But right now, we have a very special guest to welcome to our show, and that is the San Jose Sharks defenseman, Erik Karlsson. And Erik, you went 15th overall when you were drafted. I know you had a chance to speak a little bit to William Eklund yesterday, but I suppose you can really relate to the whole process that he's going through.
Yeah. It's a special moment in your life, I think, when you get to that age, when you start realizing that, your life is about to take off and hockey's going to be a big part of that. So getting drafted to the NHL, I think, is the ultimate thing that you try and achieve as, an 18, 19-year-old kid. So I'm sure he was very happy about that. It seems like, he has pretty good understanding about what the NHL is. And, with today's technology, I'm sure he grew up watching it a lot more than, I did and some of, my fellow Swedes that got drafted back then, where TV wasn't, that big of a deal. So I got the chance to talk to him a little bit yesterday, and he seemed, extremely excited to start this journey and become a partner of the Sharks organization.
Like yourself, you played in the SHL as a teenager. How unusual is that to be a young player playing in the top league in Sweden?
No, I mean, I think, it's different than over here. We turned pro a little bit earlier, which I think can have, some sort of upside. And obviously at the same time, you have to grow up a little bit faster sometimes. So I see it as a good thing. Obviously he's done well over there. He's playing for Djurgården, who is a very, respectable organization that have produced a lot of quality players over the course of the year. So, I know that he's probably had, good guidance from a young age, and it seems like, he's a very mature kid.
Yeah, that Djurgården organization produced a number of San Jose Sharks, Douglas Murray being a recent example, but also Johan Garpenloff, who played for the Sharks, and Marcus Ragnarsson, a very respected defenseman, played for the Sharks and came from that organization, very well respected. Wanted to ask you about what's next. You're pretty wide-eyed, I suppose, as a kid coming to your first NHL camp. The NHL now has a development camp to sort of soften that blow a little bit, but what does William have in store for him, and what will probably surprise him?
No, I think the culture is probably the biggest thing. Even though you're young, I think that moving at such a young age and come over to a different country, it takes you a while to adapt to how things work over here, even though it's probably more similar now than it used to be. But that's probably the biggest thing, just that, it's so many new things. I think hockey-wise, I don't think it's going to be that big of a transition for him. But I think he's just going to come here and enjoy it all, and the more experience you could get in, obviously with the development camp, I think that's a huge help for going into your first training camp.
What are your memories of your first training camp?
My first training camp, a lot of things. I think it's very intimidating because there's a lot of guys around that are full out men, and you come in as a young kid, and even though you think that you're strong and you played against people similar to your size, it's a big difference. So having him played in the SHL in Sweden, play against grown men, I think that's going to be an advantage for him. He's going to be a little bit more accustomed to the full size bodies having him thrown around, and other than that, I think it's just, as I said, I think it's just a culture shock a little bit. I think that everything outside of hockey is probably going to be the biggest transition. I think that hockey-wise, you get picked in the top 10. It feels like you're pretty well developed. So I hope that he's going to get the chance to come over here and try out training camp and see how he does.
When he walks first in the room, he's probably going to look at you and be wowed. I know he saw you on the Zoom call last night, but seeing you in person, who was a player when you first walked in the Ottawa locker room that you said, "Wow, I've made it"?
I met Alfie first. He actually announced my pick, and I got to meet him right away. And then I got to spend some time with him in Sweden throughout the summer. So that was probably the first guy that I saw. But as for training camp, a guy like, Jason Spezza or Mike Fisher or, Chris Phillips, Chris Neal, all these guys that, I haven't, been around. There's a lot of them. So I'm sure that once he sets, foot in our locker room and sees, we got a pretty veteran core here. So I'm sure a lot of the guys that, he's been watching growing up.
You've had you had a brother who played the game, and he has a father who played extensively, actually, for Djurgården in his professional career. And what we're hearing about this young man is that he has a lot of responsibilities in his family, and I suppose as somebody that has done that himself, that's got to be a good sign for somebody that young to take on some of those responsibilities to be a leader in his family that could translate to his career.
Yeah, 100%. It seems like, he was brought up in the hockey world. I'm sure he's been around, and seen a lot of things from a young age. But like I said, I've only spoke to him briefly, but he seems like, a very mature kid, and I'm looking forward to get to know him more.
relying on your experience going back to Sweden for the 1 year and then breaking into the National Hockey League, there's potential he could do the same thing, at least go back. So how does he follow your path to getting into the NHL after 1 year following his draft year?
No, as I said, I think, he's been a pro for a while now. So it's not necessarily the worst thing for him to go back there and again, play against, grown men, in a men's league. I think that if that's the outcome, I don't see that should be any problematic at all to continue his development, to just mature himself. So we'll see where he stands when training camps come around.
Speaking of that, Eric, training camp's going to be here before we know it, and obviously all of you guys on the Sharks have been working really hard over the summer to get ready for a new season that starts October the 16th at home against Winnipeg. How's your summer training going, and what are you looking forward to?
No, it's been good. I've been stationed here in San Jose the whole time, so I've worked out with the guys here and our trainers here, and it's been good. I think that obviously we had, unfortunately, a bit of a long off season so far, and in a lot of ways that can benefit you as well. So I'm looking forward to taking this time to prepare and get ready to hopefully have a successful season next year.
We are really looking forward to seeing you out there and getting back to normal, as it were. I mean, don't you think that's a big part of it too?
That's going to be great. I think last year was what it was. I'm happy that we got back to playing, and I'm also extremely excited and happy that things are getting back to the way that they should be and the way that they used to be.
Well, we're really looking forward to all of that, and we really appreciate the fact that you came by to see us today.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Eric Karlsson, great defenseman for the San Jose Sharks, all enthused about not only William Eklund, but the upcoming season. And we're going to continue with more of our live draft coverage presented by Kaiser Permanente in just a moment. Welcome back to our Sharks Draft Live coverage presented by our good friends at Kaiser Permanente. Have to tell you that everybody is really excited about the American Hockey League in San Jose with the Barracuda coming back for the 21-22 season. But a season after that, there's going to be a brand new building and a home for the Barracuda over on South 10th Street. And at that time, the Barracuda will definitely have a lot more exciting things to offer to all of the AHL fans. A few days ago, Nick got a chance to sit down with the senior vice president of the Sharks organization, John Gustafson, to talk about that building and what's in store for fans.
Senior Vice President of SAP Center in Sharks Ice. Gus, first of all, it's just great to be standing next to you.
It is. It's awesome, isn't it? I mean, it's been a long road, but certainly great to get back together and have some fun discussion about some great things happening over at Sharks Ice.
Yeah, we got a lot of exciting stuff on tap. And the big one, of course, is the future home of the Barracuda, right? And the expansion of Sharks Ice in San Jose. So give us a little bit of a progress report. I know the steel is officially in, so we've got the structure built, but give us an idea of where things are at.
So technically we're a little over 50% complete. Rink 5, which is the recreational facility, is pretty much fully encapsulated. We'll be just doing the finishes here shortly. And then for Rink 6, all the superstructure is done. We'll be just finishing the roof, and then we'll start with the insulative panels. And then, again, really dig in the inside and put in all those great finishes. People will have great things to see.
Yeah, I think people's minds are going to be blown. Maybe not the sexy conversation, but parking is always an issue when it comes to buildings, right? And that's something that you guys had to address even before you got the building rolling along. So there's a brand new parking structure across the road that's going to be shared by San Jose State, by the Barracuda and the Sharks, and also by the San Jose Giants. So give us an idea on what went into getting that off the ground and how this is going to benefit all parties involved.
First off, I mean, the success of the facility really is about access and parking. So we worked really hard with the city of San Jose and with San Jose State to ensure that, we are adequately parked in the South Campus development. So San Jose State took the lead and built a 1,500 stall parking garage, which we have access to 365 days a year, which is great. And, they have very favorable rates as it relates to just our daytime parking if it's necessary. We currently have 600 parking spaces on our site in itself, which are free to the public. But if somebody has to park into the garage as an overflow on a regular day, it's an hour, $1 for an hour, or $4 for the entire day. So
you look at a parking structure and normally it's underwhelming, right? But it's a beautiful facility. San Jose State has some pictures of football players and different cool art on the wall. So it's a beautiful setup kind of leading into the new building. Let's talk a little bit about the new building. Yeah. The amenities. When you get the opportunity to view it from a virtual standpoint at this point, it's incredible. And you guys did not skip a beat or skip any area of the new building. Give us an idea of the amenities and what fans should be excited about this new building.
Well, first of all, think about intimate. Again, 4,200 seats, very loud, not a bad seat in the house, number one. Number two is, we've had the fortune to go through all the new NHL buildings and see the latest, greatest items that people are pitching, more group settings, more, bar settings. So we've got some really interesting things and unique things that, people will go kind of wow. Like, for instance, we're building a bar right behind the net. To date, I haven't seen that anywhere. We have a great party deck. So not only would it facilitate great groups, but just give a real great feel. And then certainly we have 12 suites. We have a theater box. We've got loge suites, state-of-the-art technology, an LED board, as well as a center-hung scoreboard. So again, we're really excited to really show off what we're bringing to San Jose.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. I asked to try to get the broadcast booth in the bar area behind the net, but nobody was listening to me when I asked that. Just looking at the building and the size of it, the magnitude, over 400,000 square feet, you have 6 facilities. Biggest facility of its kind in North America, which is tremendous. You're including Canada as well. What do you think when you hear of that and the opportunities for the building in the future? Maybe having the World Junior Championships or even NCAA Frozen Four. Is it kind of endless when you think about what this building could provide?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is being proud. I mean, just, being in at some point, a non-traditional hockey market, and what our organization has made and has changed the mentality of San Jose. Some people have coined us, Icetown 2.0. And it's just not hockey, right? It's figure skating, it's public session, it's birthday parties. It's really a great community asset. And, we're going to have almost 2 million people visit that venue annually. And we're going to have lots of events, which again will also drive economic benefit to the city of San Jose. So just our facility, I think the thing that really hits me over the head is just the depth and the breadth of the people that can come to it. I mean, anybody who can walk, or even if you're able to disabled, there's something for you here. And that's so exciting for us. And we're proud to bring such a great amenity to the city of San Jose.
You played college hockey at Colorado College. You know what it's like to play in an intimate setting. It's different when fans are on top of you, the type of energy it can provide for the team. Was that kind of the thought when you guys are putting this thing together, maybe a college type environment?
Yes, Nick. I mean, we wanted a real intimate, something that would be exciting, and the economics of it really dictate what's the right thing to do. And us building a 8 to 10 to 12,000 seat another arena just didn't make a whole lot of sense. This is the wheelhouse for a development program. We weren't unrealistic, and this is something that we know that is really the sweet spot for what we intend to do. And again, that building is just not for the Barracuda. I mean, we'll be using it every other day for our recreational customers. Furthermore, we're going to be looking to bring in other events, whether it's a World Curling Championship or a special, figure skating event, or maybe even a small concert, which, really it's probably not that high on our priority, but we have that opportunity to do so.
Brand new building will be ready, not this year, but the following year. Extremely exciting. I want to talk about home ice advantage. And there's going to be something special about this building. When opposing teams come in, it's going to be a hard place to play. So fill fans in on kind of the thoughts of what you guys hope to provide from a home ice standpoint.
Well, I mean, again, intimate's number one. Number two is it's going to be a great fan experience where, the Barracuda players will come out of their locker room. There'll be a really cool high five tunnel where, our fans can be close to our players. For the visiting team, not so fun, because they're going to have a very long walk, and we purposefully put that in there. Because we definitely need the home rink advantage. But, just, again, coming back to what we started, I mean, we were really the catalyst of having your development team in the same market. And now everybody else seems to be wanting to do that. To add this to our program that we, discussed and came to fruition 6 years ago is that much more. So, I mean, if you're in our organization, ultimately you want to be with the San Jose Sharks, but knowing that when you come here, that, you already have a place, you're not having to go and platoon back and forth to another city in the event that you're playing for the development team. You're here, you know it. The coaches, the general managers, they're always watching. So, you get not a realistic shot, but you have the opportunity to be seen and move on up. So I think you put that all together, that's a huge win for our organization.
The Sharks have been one of the best organizations in getting players from Europe or signing undrafted players. We've got the NHL Draft obviously transpiring right now. So there's other players that will not hear their name called, but there's lots of talent still out there. Do you see this as maybe an opportunity, a selling point for the organization? Hey, not only are you going to play in the same city, so night in and night out, the brass is watching you, but you're going to play in a world-class facility.
Absolutely. And, as an athlete, you want to play in front of people, and you want it loud, because some days you're just not, you're not 100%. And a crowd can make the world of difference to get you to that next level. So this building is definitely designed for that. It is going to be super loud, state-of-the-art technology and lights, so nice and bright, TV quality. So yeah, we're super excited, and we know that, what we're providing our future players is something that we can be proud of.
So those fans that are chomping at the bit, they want to get season tickets, they want to get involved now. You guys have talked about different things, whether it's going to be a plaque or a brick, but some way to make it a memorable experience to be the first to jump on board. Fill us in a little bit what you guys have thought about in terms of season ticket holders and how they can become a unique piece of this new building?
Yeah, certainly we'll be kicking off the 22-23 campaign here sooner rather than later. But yes, we're going to have some legacy offerings, whether it's a brick or a name bar within the concourse to commemorate, being an inaugural season ticket holder in the new building, and much, much more.
It gets me excited thinking about it. I'm ready to go for this upcoming year. We love SAP Center. It has been a great home for the Barracuda, but I know everybody's excited about getting their own facility and being able to build the business. We talked a little bit off air about the business side as well. Not only are you trying to feed the big club, but now you're trying to build a business as well. Fill us a little bit in on the thoughts moving forward with the Barracuda from a business standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a much more challenging to have two teams in the same market in the same building, especially the size of SAP Center. So we knew that, once we got this opportunity to roll out a new venue and a new facility, that, we would then expand the staff and really kind of give it its own org structure. Because when you're here, we had very few assets as it relates to corporate partnerships and a lot of fixed signage over there. The AHL will have its own, its own assets, and has the opportunity to really carve out a niche where it's totally different. So again, SAP Center is I love it. It's the Shark Tank's the best place in the world to play in the National Hockey League. The new Barracuda Arena is going to be the best place in the world to play an American Hockey League game. So that's what we want to bring there, and just make it super exciting. And again, a place for our players to aspire to be great.
And it's going to cut out a real identity for the American Hockey League club. John Gustafson, thank you for the time. Tremendous insight. It was great to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks, Nick.
Our thanks to John Gustafson for joining us. A lot of exciting things to get ready for as the Barracuda are getting set to get their own home in 22-23. And some of us had the opportunity to take part in that. As an AHL alumnus myself, I wanted to make sure that I signed one of the beams that we were allowed to do. So there's a good shot of it right there. One of the beams that's actually being put in place. There's one for display and one that's way, way up on the roof of the building. That's going to be that one. And that is pretty exciting for all of us to be able to sign that and make sure that we're attached to that new building. Coming up, we are going to visit with the president of the San Jose Sharks, Jonathan Becher. And indeed, much more coming up to talk about with the upcoming season following today's draft coverage. We continue with Sharks Draft Live, presented by Kaiser Permanente. And we are very welcomed by the guest that is joining us right now, Jonathan Becher, the president of the San Jose Sharks, to discuss the excitement and the intensity and everything that's going on with the start of the season. We've got draft day coverage going on right now. Very exciting to have William Eklund selected, but there's a whole lot to look forward to coming up in September and October.
It is, and it's great to be on the show. Good to see you and Nick live. Haven't done that much over the last year and a half. And as buzzy as today is, as exciting as draft day is, we have a lot more in store for next season. I can't wait till October 16th. How about you guys?
I'm fired up.
I can't wait. I mean, the NHL's version of West Side Story starting the season and so much more.
So, Dan, I'm not sure everybody knows what that means. That means October 16th, we play our first home game against Winnipeg. That's the
Sharks versus the Jets. For
Indeed.
those of you who haven't watched the movie with Natalie Wood and Richard Bamer, you might want to check it out. Very, very good knowledge for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting schedule coming up. For those of you who haven't dissected the schedule yet, we went away from the baseball-style schedule, if you will, and went back to a more traditional hockey schedule. But the good news is for that, what do you call it, West Side Story game,
yes,
will be unlimited number of fans, which is going to be great for everybody, not just us, of course, as fans, but for the players themselves. Lots of them have mentioned when a few people got back into the building at the end of last season, even just 1,000 fans makes a difference. So having 18,000 screaming Sharks fans in the building, that's going to be spectacular.
One thing that I'm wondering about is what's the response from the public to wanting to get back to the building? Because obviously dealing with the pandemic has been quite a challenge.
You know, we've run some surveys. The NHL has run some surveys. The NHL survey interviewed a couple of thousand people around the North American market, primarily in the U.S., and asked them, how likely are you to come back into a building if it reopens to full capacity? From very likely to not very likely. And 86% of what they described as active, passionate fans said they wanted back in. 79% of casual fans back in. And our own surveys are pretty much the same thing. These are surveys done in June and July, just when the pandemic eased up here in California. So my sense is it'll be even higher by the time we come back to October. So I think pretty much everybody's coming back.
The Sharks debuted their mobile app a couple years ago, but you've added some upgrades, if you will. Of course, you can find the Barracuda and the Sharks all audio broadcast center, but tell us a little bit about the upgrades with the app.
So everyone remembers we went to digital ticketing a couple of years ago, and what I would describe is for the last couple of years we've been mostly digital, and now we're fully digital. And by that I mean every seat, suites, not just for Sharks and CUDA games, but for concerts as well. So if you don't have the Sharks plus CUDA app, please download it. It's all brand new. It's upgraded as well. You can buy tickets through the app. You can buy food and beverage through the app. You can donate for the foundation. Of course, hopefully people are listening to us over the Sharks Audio Network through the app as well. It's really your go-to device in order to have the best experience here in SAP Center and eventually in the new arena. That was the last segment as well. Let me just give you a simple idea. One of the things we want to do for next year is reduce the amount of interaction from people. You know, you've heard it called contact lists, etc. So we want to reduce lines. So in the app starting this season, you can order food and beverage ahead of time. It'll tell you when it's ready to pick up. And so then you just go to your favorite food or beverage stand. And you don't have to wait in line to order. You can wait in a separate line. It'll be ready when you get there as well. So that's an example of how we're using technology to improve the game day experience.
Another one is the way that you have gone cashless. Technically, you can't violate legal tender laws, and obviously all legal tender is exchangeable for any debt, public or private. But you've introduced a very unique thing. Number one, you're taking cryptocurrency as well.
That's right.
But the other part of it is the concept of the reverse ATM to basically service the people that are using cash.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we went cashless is, again, to reduce interaction between people. We don't want to, particularly during these post-pandemic times, and mostly we're post-pandemic now, we want to reduce the number of times that people interact with staff. It's just an unnecessary touch point. But as you said, lots of people don't have a credit card or don't have a debit card. So we created, as you said, a reverse ATM. An ATM, normally what? You stick your ATM card in, cash comes out. A reverse ATM is you put your cash in, and a Sharks branded debit card comes out. Now, we don't charge any fees. So if you put $20 in, you get $20 on your debit card. Not only can you use it in the SAP Center, you can use it at any Sharks Ice location.
Wow.
And actually, it's a real debit card. So you can go into your favorite grocery store or restaurant or any place that accepts debit cards and use it there as well. So now fans have Sharks in their wallets at all times.
And what about cryptocurrency? Obviously, Bitcoin is the most famous one, but we have several other ones, Dogecoin, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us how that's going to work.
So about a month ago, we decided to give people more choice, right? When you want to pay for tickets, when you want to pay for suites, when you want to do something, do you use your credit card? Do you use your debit card? For a long time, we've allowed people to accept online payments as well through PayPal or Venmo. And as it turns out, those services also accept cryptocurrency. So we said, why don't we just do it directly? And so now if you have 10 currently approved coins, more coming in the future, and you want to buy season tickets, we'll allow you to do that. This isn't us speculating, by the way. I've seen some online. Some of you think that we're somehow trying to decide if Bitcoin's going up or down, if Ethereum's going up or down. We instantly transfer it to cash. You don't have to worry about what your price is on a given day. It gives you a liquid market. It gives you a chance, for all those who have speculated, a chance to play it, spend money on your favorite prop pick. That is on Cuda on the Sharks.
Does that work for merchandise too, by the way?
It does. It does not yet. Oh, you almost got me to pre-announce something there. So we have a couple of scoops coming, but that's not one of them yet.
Okay.
Speaking of merchandise, I want to talk about swag. I think all the fans watching, they've got a few Sharks jerseys in their closet, but they want to add on to it. So
Wait,
tell us a little bit.
Why is it in their closet? Shouldn't they be wearing
Well,
it on
they're
draft
probably
day?
wearing one, but you can only wear one at a time. Maybe they've got the new...
I saw a fan online that's wearing like 6 jerseys during draft day. I think he said it was lucky. So
Hopefully
sorry.
they're in an air-conditioned room, not outside, because
Fair
that
enough.
sounds like it'd be a little bit hot. But tell us a little bit about new merchandise and the offerings that the team's providing.
So we made a switch over the last couple of months, and now Aramark is our merchandise partner. And when they made a change here at SAP Center in the team store, but here's a scoop for you. We also, most people don't know, have made that change at our 3 Sharks Ice locations. So not just at Sharks Ice in San Jose, but in Fremont and Oakland as well. They'll each have slightly different merchandise, but we have much more now consistency on how this actually looks like. We're actually going to double down on the authentics. I know fans have been asking for many years for more authentic merchandise in each location, including signed merchandise that you could only get at certain times of the year now. You'll be able to purchase as well. We're dramatically expanding the women's line as well because, frankly, we haven't had enough women clothing in the past. And, frankly, for those of you that don't live near one of our buildings, Bay Area is a big place. Sometimes traffic isn't great. We relaunched an online presence, so you can go to sharksproshop.com. Go to sharksproshop.com, and every week we're adding more merchandise to it. Eventually we'll have a complete line of merchandise there as well. It's good internationally as well if you want to use it.
It sounds good to me. I know there's some authentic items on there as well. I noticed a Martin Jones game-worn mask. So there's some cool items on the website.
There are some one-time collectibles. We have some things that we're uncovered, if you will, as we did some spring cleaning on the last couple of years that we'll be putting on the site in the next couple of weeks. So for those of you that like collectibles, encourage you to check back soon. There's a special collectibles section.
Jonathan, I wanted to ask you about what's going on in downtown San Jose and the relationship that the Sharks have continued to forge with the city. What's happening as an update with that?
Yeah, so many of you heard me say before, we were born here in San Jose. We've grown up in San Jose. We'd love to stay San Jose. This is where we are. Our current lease in this building in SAP Center is through 2040. We're in active conversations with the city to extend it beyond 2040 if we can. For those of you who don't know, unlike most sports franchises, we've not taken any public money. We haven't asked for it. We will never ask for any subsidies or tax breaks. There's no taxpayer money in this building. In fact, in the 30 years we've been here, actually a little bit less than 30 years, we put more money into the building than it cost to actually build it, and we plan to do that again. The challenge is there are 5 really big projects that are happening in downtown San Jose over the next 20 or 30 years. Google gets all the press, but in fact there's construction twice as big as Google happening as well. BART's coming downtown to San Jose and then over to Santa Clara. Caltrain is being electrified. We might get high-speed rail from LA to here as well. And if these projects aren't coordinated among the 5 of them, and so far they're not, it could be a bit of chaos. It could be hard to get into the building. So it's easy to write headlines about parking. It turns out it's not a parking problem. It's an access problem. The good news is, some of you may have seen, we had a last-minute agreement with the city, probably now almost 2 months ago,
Right.
which really puts us in a much better situation. I wouldn't say it's all done and agreed to now, but we're much happier.
That's fantastic news, and obviously San Jose is our home. That's what we've always said.
Yep.
One thing, Jonathan, I wanted to finish up with as we get toward the end of our show is that the protocols for guests when they do come to SAP Center will be slightly different. Can you give us a quick synopsis of that?
Yeah, so I think the first and maybe the most important thing is when you acquire a ticket, so whether that's you purchase from us, you purchase online, you go to a secondary market, you transfer it during the app. I'm plugging the app again. Sorry, Nick. No matter how you get a ticket, at that point of acquisition, you're required to say that either you're going to be fully vaccinated, right, 2 or 1 shots, depending on which vaccine, or you will go get tested negative within 72 hours of when you show up in the building. If you do that, then you're allowed in public buildings, and we're considered a public building as well. If you come into the building unvaccinated, which means you tested negative, then you're going to need to wear a mask the entire time you're here. You don't have to wear a mask if you're vaccinated. Now, what we don't know yet, and here's the part that's hard for fans, is we don't know what other restrictions might come from the NHL or other local authorities in the future. The ones, I don't think it'll be big issues, but we may not be able to do the player high-five tunnel, for example, because of interaction with players. We're not sure how close people can come to practice or whether we can do signings next year as well. So those will be figured out between us, the city, the county, the NHL, the Players Association in the coming months. But the simple thing is, it'll feel pretty normal. If you're vaxxed and you come into our building, it'll feel like 2019 again.
Well, that's exactly what we want to feel. We want to make sure that we feel that, and we thank you for your leadership in that entire process, because without good leadership, none of this stuff could happen. Jonathan, thanks so much.
Thanks, both of you.
Thank you.
Take care.
We look forward to having Jonathan Becher join us again during the course of the season and having you listen on the Sharks Audio Network. More in a moment. Welcome back to Sharks Draft Live, presented by Kaiser Permanente. Well, the San Jose Sharks are getting closer to their third-round draft selection, but it got slowed up a little bit, Nick, because of a trade between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Detroit Red Wings. What I've noticed is a lot of teams are maneuvering with multiple pick exchanges.
Well, it makes you think, did Vegas believe San Jose was going to take a player that they coveted, so they slide right in front of the Sharks and select a player? But as you mentioned, Sharks have 2 picks now made. They still got lots and lots of picks available. I'm sure they've got plenty of players on their board they could select.
And let's upgrade that and update you on that. We have, of course, William Eklund going 7th overall to the San Jose Sharks in round 1 yesterday. Today, so far, the Sharks have made 1 pick. That was the 81st overall selection. And that was a goaltender by the name of Benjamin Gaudreau. A little bit more of a scouting update on him. He didn't play this last year because he was in the Ontario Hockey League, and they did not play at all. So his most recent action was in the 1920 season for Coach Darian Hatcher and the Sarnia Sting. He's 6'2", which is not the standard of the 6'6" behemoths that everybody is getting now, such as Adin Hill. But we are told that the Sharks are absolutely thrilled with this guy. They think that if he had actually played a full season in the OHL this year, that he would have gone much higher. So again, kudos to people like Pat Funk and Robbie Grillo and Brian Gross and everybody in Europe, Nicky Sundstrom and Tommy Kallio and Shin Larson for being really ahead of the curve in this area, and we've seen this for a few years.
Yeah, and the Sharks are officially on the clock, getting ready to take their 3rd pick. You mentioned the goaltending spot, though. There was rumors maybe the Sharks would look at a goaltender in that 1st round. They elect to use their 2nd pick in the 3rd round. You mentioned maybe not the prototypical size that everybody wants nowadays, 6'4", north of 6'4", but he's athletic, he's agile, 6'2", a little bit more maybe versatility when it comes to his movements. But the scouting staff ecstatic to get this young player where they got him. But it was the real challenge of this past year, no OHL season. Some players went overseas. He did not. Therefore, he sat out the entire year. So maybe the silver lining, he'll be fresh when development camp comes around.
We like to talk about the schedule, which is coming up, of course. And one thing that broadcasters do is we don't necessarily look at the home games, as most Sharks fans do. Usually you say, hey, here's the Sharks homestand and these particular dates. Which of the games am I going to go to? But what we do is we look at the road games to see where we're going to be going. And we're just absolutely thrilled that it's going to be getting back to normal in that area. The first big road trip for the Sharks is in October. One of my favorite trips of the year, going to Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Boston, and this year, Nashville, Music City added to that. So if you guys are planning on a road trip, that's one that I would definitely recommend that you might take if you have the opportunity to do it. But what about the Barracuda schedule?
Well, it's a little bit different when it comes to destinations. We're not going to Montreal or Nashville, so I can't say that. We do have pretty city. San Diego as one of our stops. But the Barracuda kick things off Sunday, October 17th on the road against the Bakersfield Condors, affiliate of the Edmonton Oilers, and then they return home for the first time. They'll kick off the home schedule, 34 home games out of their 68 on the regular season schedule. They'll kick it off against the Colorado Eagles, affiliate of the Colorado Avalanche. That game is scheduled for Friday, October 29th. You go to sjbarracuda.com right now to pick up your tickets. Family-friendly prices. It should be a lot of fun, and the Barracuda are expected this year to be back at SAP Center on a full-time basis. Last year, they went in between SAP Center and the practice facility due to COVID-19. This year, we'll be fully back at SAP Center before we usher and christen a brand new building next season.
That's all really exciting. And how about this for excitement? The San Jose Sharks have just made a 4th-round draft selection. They have taken defenseman Gannon Larocque, an Edmonton, Alberta native, who played actually for the Fort McMurray oil barons to get started. And we, of course, know about all of the fires that devastated that community a few years ago. But he's been playing with the Victoria Royals of the Western Hockey League. This past season, 2020-21, he had 1 goal and 6 assists and 30 penalty minutes in 21 games in that shortened season that everybody that played junior had to do. But he's only 17. He's going to turn 18 in August. So this is a very young draft pick, a right-handed shooting defenseman. He's 6'2", 200. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to get somebody like that because this is a guy that really can help.
Well, right shots are always coveted. Good size, as you mentioned. Interesting note, the Sharks took 9 forwards a season ago, and they wait till their 3rd pick to select a defenseman. But they felt like there was players obviously higher on the board that they wanted to select, but a nice little pick in the 4th round.
9 forwards last year, no defenseman, no goalie. So far, we have 1 forward, William Eklund, 1 defenseman, and 1 goaltender so far. Want to thank everybody for joining our broadcast today of Sharks Draft Live, especially our presenting sponsor, Kaiser Permanente. And we also want to thank our guests, Erik Karlsson of the San Jose Sharks, Jonathan Becher, Sharks president, according to us, the best leader in all of professional sports. And speaking of leaders, Doug Wilson Jr., the Sharks director of scouting, and last but certainly not least, Doug Wilson, the general manager of the San Jose Sharks. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to William Eklund for being our guest. And thanks to all of you for sending us your Twitter questions and for taking part in our Sharks Draft Live show. Want to make sure that you stay tuned to the NHL Network for the rest of the National Hockey League Draft. And we thank you for joining us today on Sharks Draft Live. On behalf of Nick Nollenberger, I'm Dan Rusanowsky. So long until development camp.